Red Bull is investigating a possible advantage that McLaren has gained over the last few races, and it might be one of the strangest cases if the FIA agrees with their claims. While most teams have been focusing on the car's appearance, especially bodywork and front wings, McLaren seems to have taken a different approach by tweaking their brakes in a way that might fall into a gray area of the rules. Red Bull noticed this and quickly reported it to the sport's governing body. Although the FIA allowed McLaren's brake setup in the last two races, many are asking if there's any truth to Red Bull's accusations. If so, how much of an edge could McLaren really be getting? The current F1 regulations are very strict, preventing teams from making major changes to their cars during the season. Despite this, teams always try to find clever ways to improve. Since the Miami race, McLaren has suddenly been about half a second faster than they were earlier in the season. Red Bull believes this boost comes from a trick involving the brake discs. To explain simply, every car is allowed to have small holes near the front and rear brake discs. These holes are open during Friday's practice sessions to collect data, but must be covered starting from Saturday's practice and throughout qualifying and the race. In the last two races, photos showed that McLaren's MCL38 brake discs had been covered with duct tape. While covering the holes is technically allowed, it raised suspicions because this only became visible recently. Meanwhile, McLaren seemed to have a strong pace, especially on older tires, compared to other teams. In races like Austria, McLaren's driver Lando Norris managed to close the gap to the leader even on harder tires. On mediums, he quickly caught up to Max Verstappen, who was on used tires, which helped Norris a lot in challenging the three-time world champion. Even back in 2023, when Red Bull was clearly dominant from the start of the season, other teams were also trying new ideas, some of which raised questions about legality. For example, Aston Martin had to reinforce their front wing around the nose because it was suspected to bend under certain speeds, which could have broken FIA rules. Mercedes faced similar scrutiny with their 2024 front wing design, and Red Bull has even questioned its legality. Mercedes insists their design is legal, and the FIA has not banned it. The tape covering McLaren's brake ducts caught Red Bull's attention strongly enough that they filed an official complaint with the FIA. To understand why we need to look closer at tire performance from these teams, McLaren has shown better performance on older tires than Red Bull on some circuits, like Miami and Barcelona, before the complaint was made. This was thought to be because the MCL38 handles better when it's lighter, thanks to having less fuel weight. However, Red Bull suspects there might be more to it. According to reports, the complaint was filed before the last two races. Even though the MCL38 was one of the fastest cars in those events, the addition of Mercedes at Silverstone created a tight battle between the three teams. Although Verstappen's win in Austria involved some luck, Mercedes being faster at Silverstone supports Red Bull's belief that McLaren gained an advantage by covering their brake holes at times when it was not allowed. Now, McLaren needs to show that these accusations are false and that Red Bull is just trying to damage their reputation. Red Bull is facing a tough situation since their RB20 car has lost its dominance, and the team hasn't found big upgrades lately. Gaining over half a second with just one upgrade always looks suspicious, but Mercedes' recent improvements show that teams are figuring out their cars better. Red Bull can't always rely on small advantages to stay ahead. This is one of their weaknesses, and they want to slow down others from progressing quickly, just like they did when they took the lead in 2022. Unlike Red Bull, many teams now believe they can still make their cars faster. Even though Mercedes's team principal, Toto Wolff, said it will take time before they return to their old winning form, the season is shaping up to be very competitive. The next races on European tracks should be exciting. These little battles between teams, like the one between McLaren and Red Bull, are expected, especially after McLaren's CEO, Zak Brown, criticized Red Bull for having a toxic work environment. Several engineers left Red Bull recently, which is causing problems for the Austrian team. Red Bull can only blame themselves for chasing a new development path that hasn't worked as planned. Even though they have not lost performance, engineers from McLaren say Red Bull ignored advice from their former engineer Neil about fixing hidden problems. Covering the brake ducts doesn't mean McLaren is suddenly weak. On the contrary, in the last 2 races they have been quite fast, sometimes faster than Red Bull's RB20. Looking at Silverstone, during the first stint on medium tires, Verstappen lost ground to both Norris and Piastri purely because of pace. This weakens Red Bull's argument that the brake duct holes are the main factor. Even Verstappen himself admitted that the team can't just say they've hit the limit and can't improve the car any further. His honest comment might be the best takeaway from this whole situation. When discussing Red Bull's RB20, senior team members like Christian Horner and Pierre Gasly have made comments about pushing for more performance. Verstappen stated, "I refuse to believe we can't find gains because then you get lazy. I'm sure everyone at the factory is giving their all to bring improvements, but other teams are also smart and working hard." He pointed out that more development time would help, but the rules are designed to slow down the winning teams. While being the chaser, you like those rules. As the leader, it's frustrating to be caught during the season. That's simply how the regulations work. These remarks came at a sensitive time for Red Bull. They are struggling to maintain their competitive edge, especially with Sergio Perez underperforming. This has opened the door for teams like McLaren and Mercedes to close the gap. If Verstappen doesn't win most races, Red Bull risks dropping to 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull is now under pressure and looking for any weaknesses in rival teams to slow them down. Their recent complaint about McLaren's brake ducts is a clear sign of this strategy. While the investigation might not find anything against McLaren, it shows how desperate Red Bull is to keep their advantage. In the past, Red Bull themselves have faced similar challenges from teams like Mercedes, so it's understandable they want to stop others from moving forward too quickly. Still, the way Red Bull is handling this situation reveals some of their current struggles. With all this in mind, the big question is, are Red Bull's accusations against McLaren justified? Will the FIA find any illegal activity regarding the brake ducts? McLaren surprised many by challenging Red Bull with just one upgrade package, and this sudden rise has caught attention. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now for more on this story. To sum it up, the battle between Red Bull and McLaren has added an interesting twist to this season. Both teams are pushing hard, and small details like brake duct designs are now in the spotlight. Whether or not the FIA finds anything against McLaren, it's clear that every team is looking for any edge they can get. Racing has always been about innovation and finding clever ways to improve within the rules. This story shows just how tight the competition has become and how careful teams must be with their designs. At the end of the day, the on-track action will decide who comes out on top. Fans can look forward to some exciting races ahead, as these teams battle not only on speed, but also in the technical arena. Thanks for watching and following this update. Stay tuned for more news and analysis coming your way soon.